Now let's take a moment to try doing a work simulation in dark mode. Dark mode is enabled through the interface customization options, where I am able to easily find and choose between the two available working modes. At this point, let's see how the different dialogues appear, how there's this dominance of gray and blue colors. Let's maybe move into the options menu to look at the different options available within the program, and for example, to appreciate new options like those that will be discussed when we cover the topic of modeling, specifically regarding room finishes. At this point, let's move to the various palettes. I could, for instance, access the layer palette or use the contextual menu headers to enable, for example, the standard level list to see how my entire model has been distributed in height. Let's now move inside the level palette, the object palette, the library, the assistants, and the properties. You can see how all these components are also particularly readable. By tapping on a multi-layer object, such as a wall, we have these new components that allow me, in an interactive way, to select all the objects without having to use the drop-down menu, which lets me select either all the layers or just the current layer. So in terms of intuitiveness, everything is much more user-friendly. Let's go ahead and change some colors. And as a result, let's see how, for example, thanks to this type of switch, I can enable all the detection features and therefore the ability to detect characteristics directly from another element. Let's try selecting a floor slab and see how, once again, I have a graphical interface available to me. An interactive one that allows me to select the layer directly and then modify all its characteristics. Let's try navigating through the menus. Among the menus, there are probably some that you use more frequently, such as import documents and export documents. So it might be a good idea to set up a custom shortcut for these two types of items. Here, in fact, we find all the sets of predefined shortcuts, but you can customize them according to your needs. Let's try searching for resources. We find project and resource management. And inside here, we find the two functions we saw earlier. For example, let's try assigning the shortcut exp for export and imp for import. After that, remember that with this type of button, you can bring up a summary of all the shortcuts you've configured, so you can print them out or paste them into other applications. In itself, this operation turns out to be absolutely unnecessary because as soon as you assign a shortcut, it is automatically displayed next to the corresponding function. So you'll always have it at your fingertips. By typing the letters EXP, you can quickly export your model, and by typing the letters IMP in sequence, you can directly import your zip file. This way, using shortcuts significantly improves your performance. Now, let's see what happens when I right-click on a wall. So here I have the possibility to change a number of aspects, and among these aspects that I can modify, I can of course bring up the properties dialog for that object. But let's also look at the concept of transparency. At this point, I decide that I want to make my wall 60% transparent. So now I could do something even smarter. These sub-functions can also be assigned a shortcut. As a demonstration, I'd like to show you how I could assign these values to define my shortcut. So 60% would be 60, 80% would be 80. 100% transparency, 100, so 3 digits. So if I tap on my wall and type 0, I remove the transparency. If I tap it and type 60, I set the transparency to 60. You can see for yourselves that by doing this, everyday operations become noticeably faster. Let's try calling up other types of palettes, such as the Grazi one, for example, related to the environment, where I can, for example, set a background color by picking it directly from another color available within my graphical interface. At this point, let's try right-clicking to bring up a component filter so that we can filter all the columns currently displayed on the screen. I press Ctrl A to select them all, and then I move them into the information palette. Here, I can enable a whole series of items I'm interested in, such as volume, floor area, height, pillar section, and so on. The pillar section in this case has been defined as a custom attribute. After that, directly from here, I can add further information directly to my objects. I can select a whole series of elements and then populate them directly with the values I see fit. At this point from here, we can perform a whole range of operations, such as sorting or other types of actions, to carry out the necessary analyses. The main goal was to show you the kind of experience you get when working specifically with dark mode.